If you are over 60 and managing diabetes or prediabetes, you are facing a cardiovascular risk that is 2 to 4 times higher than the general population. And yet, there is a food sitting in every grocery store right now that has been shown in real clinical trials to interrupt that risk from the inside. Zero-carbohydrates. Proven in randomized human studies to slow the progression of prediabetes. Costs less than a cup of coffee a serving. And 9 out of 10 of my patients have been eating the wrong version of it for years. I am talking about fish, but not in the vague way most articles tell you. Because type 2 diabetes is not just a sugar problem. It is a slow, smoldering inflammation problem. Inside an inflamed body, insulin receptors behave like locks that have rusted shut. The key fits, but nothing turns. The sugar stays in the blood, inflammation rises, and the cycle feeds itself, year after year, often without you feeling a single warning. The right fish, eaten the right way, cuts that cycle from the inside out. The wrong fish quietly accelerates the very biology you are trying to slow down. So today, I am going to walk you through the 5 best fish for diabetes after 60, counting down from number 5 to number 1. Stay with me to the end, because number 1 is the only fish on this list with a 1-year clinical trial in 152 adults over 65 with prediabetes. And the results stun the research team. It is also one of the cheapest fish in your supermarket, the one almost everyone over 60 walks right past. And after I reveal number 1, I will warn you about 4 common fish you must absolutely avoid, including 2 that sound almost identical to the good ones I just recommended. Before we go further, I want to know where you stand. Be honest with yourself. How often does fish actually show up on your plate? Every day, 2 to 3 times a week, once a week, or almost never? Drop your number in the comments. That single answer tells me more about your trajectory than almost any lab value I could order. And if blood sugar is something you wrestle with every week, hit subscribe so my next video lands in your feed without you having to search for it. Now, let us count down. You may be wondering why I am putting so much weight on a single food category. After all, you have already cut back on sugar. You watch your bread, you take your medication. So why fish? The honest answer is that fish works on 4 different pathways that drive diabetes forward in older adults, and it works on all of them at once. The first is inflammation. The omega-3 fatty acids in fatty fish, EPA and DHA, retrain the immune cells stuck in attack mode and shift them back into a calm repair state. Quiet the inflammation, and those rusted insulin receptors slowly start to turn again. The second is how your body handles food. Fish protein triggers GLP-1, the same hormone the newer diabetes injections try to mimic. Your own body releases it for free when you eat fish. It slows stomach emptying, blunts the sugar spike from anything you eat alongside, and tells your brain you are full earlier than usual. The third is vitamin D. Most of my patients with type 2 diabetes test low for it, and that low level directly weakens the beta cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. Fatty fish is one of the very few foods that delivers vitamin D in meaningful amounts. Sunshine alone rarely covers it after 60. The fourth is your heart. The American Heart Association has been recommending 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week for years. After 60 with diabetes, your heart risk is multiplied. Cutting that risk through food is not optional. It is essential. 4 mechanisms, 1 food category. Now let us look at the 5 specific fish that deliver these benefits, starting from number 5 and climbing all the way up to the one with the strongest clinical evidence I have ever seen for a supermarket food. Coming in at number 5 is the fish probably already sitting in your pantry right now, light canned tuna. And I want to be very clear about why it earns a spot here, even at number 5. Tuna gets criticized a lot, but the truth depends entirely on which tuna you are buying. The FDA has classified light canned tuna, which is mostly skipjack, in their best choices category, with average mercury at about 0.13 parts per million. Compare that to albacore, the white tuna, at 0.36, almost 3 times higher. And big eye tuna, the kind served at sushi counters, at 0.69, in the FDA's avoid category entirely. So when I say tuna, I mean light. Skipjack. The little can with the blue or yellow label that costs about $1.50. Read the front. If it says white or albacore, put it back and reach for the one that says light or chunk light. Why does it deserve a place here? Because light tuna gives you about 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per 100 grams, with zero carbohydrate and a modest but real amount of omega-3. It is shelf-stable. It needs no cooking. On the days when standing at the stove feels like too much, a can of light tuna becomes a complete protein meal in 3 minutes. That accessibility matters more than most nutrition articles admit. One caution, though. The FDA's own testing in 2014 found that about 6% of light tuna cans tested higher in mercury than expected. That is not a reason to avoid it. It is a reason to do what I tell every patient. Rotate your fish sources. 2 to 3 cans a week is the safe rhythm. Always choose tuna packed in water or olive oil, never in soybean or sunflower oil. Drain the can well before you eat it. That single step removes 30 to 40% of the sodium. Mix it with plain Greek yogurt, a squeeze of lemon, and chopped celery, and you have a meal that respects your blood sugar. But convenience is just the entry point. If you want omega-3 that really moves the needle on inflammation, we need to climb to number 4. At number 4 is a fish almost no one talks about, and that silence is costing diabetes patients real benefit. Atlantic mackerel. Pay close attention to the word Atlantic, because I will come back to that distinction in a few minutes. Atlantic mackerel sits at the top tier for omega-3 density. USDA data puts it at roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of combined EPA and DHA per 100 gram serving. That is more concentrated than salmon by weight, in a fish that costs a fraction of the price. One can, $3 at most supermarkets. And inside it, you also get vitamin D, B12, selenium, and an antioxidant called coenzyme Q10 that plays a quiet but important role in how your cells produce energy. That coenzyme Q10 is the reason I want every patient on long-term metformin paying attention to mackerel. Let me tell you about Dorothy, a woman who walked into my office last spring. She was 72, on metformin for 8 years, her diabetes under good control. But she had started noticing a faint tingling in her fingertips at night and a fatigue no amount of rest seemed to fix. Her primary care doctor had told her this was simply aging. When I ran her vitamin B12 level, it was borderline deficient. This is a well-documented side effect of long-term metformin that very few patients are warned about. Her exact words to me were, "Doctor, I thought tingling was just what happens when you get older." We did not change her medication. We did not add a supplement first. I asked her to add canned Atlantic mackerel to her routine twice a week, prepared simply with lemon and olive oil over salad. 4 months later, her B12 was back in the middle of the healthy range. The tingling had faded. She had her energy back. The mackerel did not replace her treatment. It filled a gap the treatment had quietly opened. Now, here is where I need you to slow down. The mackerel I just described is Atlantic mackerel. It is small, about 12 inches long, and you will mostly find it canned, right next to the sardines. There is another fish called king mackerel that you will see fresh at coastal fish counters, sold as large steaks. Same family name. Completely different mercury profile. Completely different risk. I will come back to that warning at the end because I have seen patients confuse the two with serious consequences. For now, just remember the word on the label, Atlantic. Anywhere you would use canned tuna, you can use mackerel instead. The flavor is stronger, but a squeeze of lemon and some fresh herbs tame it beautifully on whole grain toast or tossed into a salad. We are now stepping into the top 3. And number 3 is where the clinical evidence gets really serious. Quick pause before we go higher. Of the 4 fish I've mentioned so far, which one have you actually never tried? Or which one are you already planning to grab on your next grocery run? Drop it in the comments. Sitting at number 3 is a fish most people walk past in the freezer aisle, assuming it is too plain to matter. Cod, white, mild, flaky. The same fish your grandmother might have served on a Friday night. And yet, this unassuming fish has something almost none of the other lean white fish have. A real, published, randomized clinical trial showing it improves insulin sensitivity in human beings. Not a mouse study. A controlled experiment in adults. In 100 grams of cod, you get 18 to 20 grams of high-quality protein, only 82 calories, and 0 carbohydrate. The fat content is low, but the omega-3 content is still meaningful for a lean fish. Here is the study I want you to remember. In 2007, researchers at Laval University in Quebec published a clinical trial in the journal Diabetes Care. They took 19 adults with insulin resistance and put them through a carefully designed crossover study. For 4 weeks, their main protein came from cod. For another 4 weeks, the same participants ate their protein from other animal sources: lean beef, pork, eggs, dairy. Everything else was matched. Researchers measured insulin sensitivity using the hyperinsulinemic euglycemic clamp, one of the most precise techniques in metabolic medicine. The result: when these same individuals ate cod, their insulin sensitivity improved significantly compared to when they ate other animal proteins. And there was a trend toward better beta cell function as well, the cells that make insulin in your pancreas. What this told the medical community is something we are still digesting today. It is not only the omega-3 in fatty fish that helps. The protein in lean fish like cod contains specific peptides that act directly on how your muscle and liver cells respond to insulin. This is a benefit you do not get from chicken breast. You do not get it from lean steak. You get it from fish, and there is more. The NOAC study, a large cohort following nearly 34,000 Norwegian women, found that those who ate 75 to 100 grams of lean fish per day, roughly 2 to 3 servings a week, had about a 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to women who did not eat lean fish at all. Preparation is forgiving. A 150-gram piece of cod baked with paprika, garlic, lemon, and a drizzle of olive oil takes 15 minutes and keeps you full for hours. The science is clear on cod, but there is a fish at number 2 so familiar you might be expecting it, and there is a reason it is not at number 1. Number 2 is the fish you saw coming from a mile away. Salmon. The poster child of healthy eating. And it absolutely earns its place near the top of this list, but I am putting it at number 2, not number 1, and the reason matters. By the numbers, salmon is impressive. About 22 grams of protein per 100 grams, around 13 grams of fat, almost all of it the heart-protective unsaturated kind. Combined EPA and DHA can reach 2 grams per serving, and there is something else inside salmon that gives it a unique edge. A pigment called astaxanthin, the one that gives wild salmon its deep orange-pink color. It is a powerful antioxidant, and early research suggests it has a specific protective effect on the beta cells of the pancreas, the very cells that get progressively exhausted in type 2 diabetes. But I owe you the full picture, not the marketing version. When researchers have looked specifically at whether salmon directly lowers fasting blood sugar in randomized trials, the results have been more modest than most people expect. One well-designed trial, published in the British Journal of Nutrition in 2021, conducted at the University of Cambridge with 88 adults who had elevated blood sugar, found that adding salmon protein over 8 weeks did not significantly change glucose response, lipids, or blood pressure compared to placebo. That does not mean salmon failed. It means we have to be honest about what salmon does best. Where salmon truly shines is the bigger picture. It lowers systemic inflammation. It supports insulin sensitivity through the omega-3 pathway over months and years. It is one of the very best dietary sources of vitamin D. And most importantly, it protects your heart at a time when your heart needs every layer of protection it can get. For someone with diabetes after 60, that protection is not a bonus. It is essential. A note for your shopping cart. If you can find wild-caught Pacific salmon, sockeye, coho, or king, those varieties have the highest omega-3 content and the lowest accumulation of environmental residues. Farmed Atlantic salmon is still nutritionally good, but the omega-3 levels vary depending on what the fish was fed. For cooking, keep it simple. Baked, broiled, grilled, or steamed. Never deep fried, because high heat frying oxidizes the very omega-3 you are paying for. Most of my patients, when I ask them to guess which fish is at number 1, say salmon. You might be thinking the same thing right now, but there is a fish that beats salmon on every measurable axis: stronger clinical evidence, more omega-3 per gram, more vitamin D, and at 1/5 of the price. And it is small enough to fit in a tin you could slip into your coat pocket. Number 1 is sardines. I know what some of you are thinking. The little fish in a tin that most Americans walk past in the canned food aisle. The fish your grandfather ate, the one your spouse refuses to keep in the house. That is exactly why this is the most underrated fish for diabetes after 60. The clinical evidence behind sardines is stronger than what we have for any other fish on this list, and almost no one over 60 takes advantage of it. Let me give you the study that should be talked about in every diabetes clinic in the country. In 2021, Diana Diaz-Rizzolo and her team at the Hospital Clinic of Barcelona, an IDIBAPS, published a landmark trial in the journal Clinical Nutrition. They recruited 152 adults, all age 65 or older, all with prediabetes, with fasting glucose between 100 and 124 milligrams per deciliter. These were people exactly like many of you watching right now. The participants were randomly assigned to one of two groups. The control group received the standard nutritional guidance all prediabetes patients get. The second group received the same advice, plus one specific instruction. Eat 200 grams of canned sardines per week, that is 2 cans, spread across the week for 1 full year. Here's what happened. In the standard care group, the percentage of participants classified as high risk for developing type 2 diabetes dropped only slightly, from 27% down to 22%. In the sardine group, that same high-risk percentage dropped from 37% down to just 8%. And the marker of insulin resistance, called HOMA-IR, significantly improved only in the sardine group, with a statistical confidence of P equals 0.032. The researchers themselves wrote that they were surprised by the magnitude of the effect. What is in sardines that does this? 2 compounds working together. The first is omega-3, packed densely into a small fish. A single 125 gram can deliver 1.5 to 2 grams of combined EPA and DHA, very close to the doses used in clinical trials showing reductions in insulin resistance. The second is taurine, which sardines contain in unusually high amounts, about 147 milligrams per 100 grams. Taurine has its own independent effects on blood sugar, oxidative stress, and inflammation, separate from omega-3. The two work in synergy, hitting different molecular pathways at once. And here is something many of my patients are surprised to learn. Sardines are among the cleanest fish you can eat. Because they are small and short-lived, they accumulate almost no mercury and very few environmental pollutants. That matters more than you might think for someone over 60 with diabetes, because kidney function is often already under strain, and the less toxic load coming in, the better. Sardines are also one of the richest dietary sources of vitamin D, providing 40 to 70% of your daily requirement in a single can. Let me tell you about Frank, a patient who changed my mind about how I introduce sardines. He was 68 when he walked into my office last year with a fasting glucose of 112 and an A1C of 6.1, classic prediabetes. When I suggested sardines, he looked at me like I had insulted him. His exact words were, "Doctor, I cannot eat that. Those tins remind me of cat food commercials." I told him to try just one combination. A can of sardines packed in olive oil, drained, tossed onto a bed of arugula with red onion, lemon juice, and a slice of tomato. Twice a week. 9 months later, his fasting glucose was 102. His A1C had come down to 5.8. When I shared the numbers with him, he sat back in his chair and said, "I still cannot believe the cheapest thing in the grocery store did that." The fish with the strongest clinical evidence, the densest omega-3 per gram, the highest vitamin D, the cleanest profile for aging kidneys, often the price of a cup of coffee, sometimes even less, and the fish almost everyone over 60 walks right past because it does not look impressive. That is the irony at the top of this list. For brands, look for King Oscar or Wild Planet, and before someone asks in the comments, "No, I am not paid by either company. I have no relationship with them. I mention them only because over the years, my patients have consistently been able to find them at reasonable prices, and the quality inside the tin has been reliable. If you find another small, sustainable brand at your local store, that works just as well. Always choose sardines packed in water or olive oil. Avoid soybean or sunflower oil, which loads the can with cheap omega-6 fats that work against the very benefit you came for. One last note before we move on. If you have a history of gout, or if you are on a blood thinner like warfarin, please mention sardines to your doctor before adding them to your weekly routine. For most people, they are completely safe, but those are the two situations where I always have a conversation first. But knowing the best fish is only half the conversation, because if you go to the supermarket today and grab the wrong fish, you can quietly undo everything we just discussed. There are 4 common fish in American supermarkets that I want you to absolutely avoid, and 2 of them sound almost identical to the ones I just told you to eat. Stay with me for 2 more minutes. Mercury accumulates over time, and for someone with diabetes after 60, that buildup lands on top of nerve damage, kidney strain, and cardiovascular risk you are already managing. So these 4 fish are not optional warnings. They are firm avoids. The first is king mackerel. This is the fish I warned you about earlier. Common along the Gulf Coast and the Florida shore, sold fresh as large steaks, often over 40 inches long. The FDA places it on its choices to avoid list, with average mercury at 0.73 parts per million and peaks at 1.67. Do not confuse it with the Atlantic mackerel I recommended at number 4. Atlantic mackerel is small, around 12 inches, mostly sold canned. King mackerel is large, sold fresh. One word on the label changes everything. I had a patient named Sandra walk into my office from Florida, holding her grocery receipt, asking why her mercury panel was rising, even though she had started eating mackerel like I suggested. She had been buying king mackerel from her local fish counter. Same family, opposite outcome. The second is big eye tuna, the kind you will see on sushi menus as ahi tuna. Mercury sits at 0.69 parts per million, more than 5 times higher than the light canned tuna at number 5. The FDA places it firmly in the avoid category. The third is swordfish, common at higher-end grocery stores and steakhouse menus. Average mercury reaches 0.995 parts per million, with peaks above 3. It has been on the FDA's Do Not Eat advisory since 1994. The fourth is tilefish from the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes sold under the friendlier names golden bass or golden snapper. Mercury averages 1.123 parts per million, the highest of any commercially sold fish in the United States, with peaks above 3.7. Two of these names sound nearly identical to fish I just told you to eat. One word of difference. A completely different mercury load. Read the label before anything goes into your cart. Let me bring this together. Fish is not just lean protein. For someone managing diabetes or prediabetes after 60, the right fish is one of the few foods that works on inflammation, insulin sensitivity, vitamin D levels, and cardiovascular protection all at the same time. The problem in most kitchens is not that there is too little fish. The problem is that one of the cheapest, most evidence-backed fish, the humble sardine, gets ignored, while the high-mercury species quietly slip into the cart. Number 1 beat salmon for a reason. The science is not subtle. Here is what I want you to do in the next 7 days. First, on your next grocery trip, pick up 2 cans of sardines, packed in water or olive oil, King Oscar or Wild Planet if those are on the shelf. Less than the price of 2 lattes for the entire week's omega-3 supply. Second, when you get home, open the cabinet where your canned tuna lives. Read the label out loud. If it says light or chunk light in water, keep it. If it says white or albacore, set it aside and use it sparingly, no more than once a week. And if you happen to have swordfish, king mackerel, or tilefish in the freezer, let those go. Third, if you have been on metformin for more than 2 years, ask your doctor at your next visit for a vitamin B12 level. It is a simple blood test, often overlooked, and it can quietly explain symptoms you may have been blaming on age. Now tell me where you stand. Comment below with one of 3 numbers. Number 1, if you have never tried sardines. Number 2, if you have tried them but they are not in your routine yet. Number 3, if you are walking to your pantry right after this video to check your tuna labels. I read every comment and I will respond. And if someone in your life is living with diabetes or prediabetes, especially someone who only eats salmon and ignores sardines, or who might be buying the wrong fish without realizing it, send them this video today. It could change a number on their next lab report. I am Dr. Claire Whitmore. After more than 20 years sitting across from patients managing blood sugar, I have come to believe that the small choices you make in the canned food aisle have more power to bend your health curve than almost any pill on the market. Everything I have shared with you today is for your education, not a replacement for the doctor who knows your case. Please do not stop or change any diabetes medication without speaking to your treating physician first. Take care of yourself, read the label before you buy, and if this video helped you see fish in a new way, hit subscribe so I can keep showing up in your week.